It has been about 2 months since the release of the new Gran Turismo 7 game, and I think that finally some conclusions about the game's multiplayer can be made. I have played in it since the release day, and since then many things were either fixed or improved. The game's multiplayer is finally more or less in the state how it was intended to be from the very beginning, and probably won't change a lot from now on. In this video, I will try to explain what are the good parts and the bad parts about the online aspect of the new Gran Turismo, as well as try to break down some of the known myths about the multiplayer so that some of you can finally decide whether to buy the game or not, if you haven't done that already. The most disappointing thing about the new multiplayer mode is that you can hardly tell what has really changed from the previous Gran Turismo Sport game released about 4.5 years ago. Sadly, it kind of feels like the release of the new FIFA games, where nothing else than some squad updates and small graphic improvements are made. From this perspective, it looks like Polyphony Digital, which are Gran Turismo series developers, just wanted to sell you again the same game, but this time on a new generation of gaming consoles. These are two screenshots from these games. I'm pretty sure that none of you could instantly tell which one is from Gran Turismo 7 and which one is from the old Gran Turismo Sport. Unfortunately, the improvements that the new game multiplayer brought are not that big either. Furthermore, some of the well-known issues that have been present in the previous game for ages have still not been resolved. One of them, for instance, is that you still receive those stupid penalties during qualifying in free mode, which you are forced to serve on the following lap, instead of starting a new fresh lap. Some of you might say that this is made for the sake of realism, but it's not. The tire wear as well as the fuel do reset at the beginning of a new lap, but penalties do not. This is simply a bug that remains unfixed after so many years. Another issue is related to the yellow flags. Apparently, the game does not give a fuck about what happens under a yellow flag. If the game sees that you gained a position, it will just give you a penalty. The driver which was in front of you might have gone 100 meters off track, the game just doesn't care. Another problem that I noticed is that sometimes drivers do not become invisible after they get lapped. I don't think there is any point in explaining what this usually leads to. Another small issue is that when you buy something new for your car, a set of wet tires for example, yes, now you have to buy tires for a car, they are set as the default option for all next races, unless you manually change them. You can imagine my frustration when the next race started and I realized that I was the only guy with a wet set of tires on a dry race. The UI also remained very slow. Applying a new livery, for instance, which is by the way also not free now, takes about 30 seconds. Sadly, the new Gran Turismo is full of this bunch of small but really annoying issues which were expected to be fixed but haven't been. Now, by the way, you also cannot start playing right away after buying the game. You are required to spend around 3 to 4 hours playing single player until you get a pass allowing you to get access to online races. Okay, now let's try to have a look at the nice things about the new Gran Turismo game multiplayer. Even with all the bad things said by me previously, Gran Turismo 7, in my opinion, is probably the best online multiplayer racing game out there. This game maintains a great balance between not being too arcade, like F1 2021 for example, while also not falling into the nerdy auto simulator category with titles such as iRacing or even Assetto Corsa. Gran Turismo is very plug and play, meaning that there is no need to spend time searching for servers or players to play with, you just press one button and race. It doesn't take too much time to get started either, even if you are a beginner. The game will always place you in a lobby with players of similar driving rank. Although Gran Turismo often reminds you that it's a real driving simulator, you absolutely won't even need to have a steering wheel and pedals to play it at a high level. The game is greatly optimized for controllers. There are usually free online races available all the time. All of them take place at fixed times. For example, the third race takes place every 30 minutes. Although this might sound a bit annoying at first, as you can't start the next race right away, instead it guarantees that the lobby that will be formed for the next race will be always full. In addition to those free races, there are two more types. the Manufacturer's Cup and the Nations Cup. However, they are usually available only on specific dates. Speaking of racing itself, I think that's one of the strongest points about the game in general. Everything feels very smooth and realistic. Different aspects of the car can be adjusted, although from my experience the default settings work just fine. The penalty system used in online races, though often criticized, most of the time, in my opinion, is just fair enough. It pretty much always penalizes correctly in obvious driving incidents, however occasionally fails in others. Unlike in other auto simulators, penalties in Gran Turismo are pretty strict, forcing you to slow down for a couple of seconds on the current or following lap. On the other hand, it gets the job done by heavily reducing the number of dirty driving incidents. The new Gran Turismo 7 has brought some of its new features into multiplayer, such as changing wind conditions as well as improved racing under rain conditions. Now, some parts of the track may be wetter than others. There is also an indicator showing how much water is there on the track. From the very first day since the release of Gran Turismo 7, the game has been heavily criticized, mostly because of increased prices for in-game items, such as cars and upgrades to them. Apart from that, just like in the previous game, if you don't have enough game currency, you can always buy more of that in the PlayStation Store. The combination of those two factors obviously led to thousands of angry reviews from players. In my opinion, all this situation is slightly exaggerated. First of all, basically all of these ultra expensive items are just a bunch of old collector cars, which you will only use in some single player races. Secondly, by completing the first couple of hours of the campaign, which you are required to do if you want to race in online events, you will already get many of the cars that you're gonna need for the multiplayer. In the last update, by the way, seems like they have also added the ability to rent cars for online races for free, which is pretty nice. In addition to that, some days from the game release, Polyphony Digital has already increased the amount of prize money the player gets by the end of each online event. And if you started playing somewhere in that period, you probably also got extra 1 million credits. It's a similar story with the upgrades for the cars. Many were complaining that those are just too expensive. The reality is that many cars that you are going to need for the multiplayer are already fully upgraded when you buy them, for example the Group 4 cars. In addition to that, many races require that your car is restricted in horsepower or weight, so the upgrades may not be needed at all. To conclude, I think Gran Turismo 7 is one of the best online racing games you can play at the moment. Of course, if you have a PlayStation console. By the way, I was playing on the old PS4 generation and I didn't find any issues with this version of the game. Hope you liked this video and see you in the next one.